So it's coming to mid to late January and we've needed to get this greenhouse going. So I'm going to start getting that going. I'm going to go ahead and measure out where we're going to put it. I'm going to put it right behind me here, lengthwise. And the garden is going to pretty much stay where it is at the moment. But we are going to expand over beyond the rabbits over there. We're going to have a patch off in the distance where we're going to plant up some greens for the rabbits so we don't have to buy everything. But I'm going to go ahead and mark off where we're going to put this thing and go out and pick up some materials. Alright, so we went out inside and got our measurements. So we know that the width on this is going to be 12 feet. You know, the two sections will end up being 16 feet. And the height of the hoop will need to be 8 feet. My intention is to use 2x4s as runners. What I'll probably do is see if I can salvage the runners off of some of the pallets that I've collected. So we'll have 2x4 material down here. The tubing will come down. If you can picture, the base of each of these will have a hole drilled every, I think I'm going to do about every 4 to 5 feet, just because I want some strength. The plastic tubing isn't the strongest thing in the world, even though it's a good material to use for this. So I'll drill these holes just slightly smaller than the pipe, that way they wedge nice and tightly. And then from the side I'll come in, I'll screw into the pipe just to make sure it doesn't pop back out on me. The tubing comes in 20-foot lengths, and I am going to use 1-inch tubing. This is going to be more than 20 feet. So I'm going to have to figure out how many pieces I need for each hoop, and then over 16 feet how many hoops I need. We'll have one at each end. We'll have one in the middle, roughly, and then one that will divide those two sections on the sides. So that'll be 4, 8, 12, 16 feet, roughly. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hoops at 30 feet, 2 inches, which means we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full hoops at 20 feet, and then 5 hoops at 10 feet. Now what I also need is I'm going to put a line right down the middle, and I'm going to come down a bit, and I'm going to do a line on each side. So on the hoop, if I do it I'll have one like this, one here, and you'll have one on the end connecting into the next one down. If that makes sense, and those will run the whole length. What that'll give me is it'll give me a point to connect wire or string to be able to allow our taller plants like tomatoes to climb. So we'll need 1, 2, 3 times 16 feet to make that length. So that'll be 3 20-footers down the middle. And then I'll just need connection joints, which I'll show you once we pick them up in the store, to connect those joints where the hoops come in. So at these points we'll need one of these guys. Over here we'll need connection points like this, a T, need a couple of those. And I think that'll do it. Alright, let's go shopping. Hey guys, so we're back. They did not quite sure what I was thinking, but they don't sell this in 20-foot sticks. I believe I was thinking of PEX, but in either case. So I ended up buying this in 10-foot sticks. I know I had said I was going to get 1-inch thick pipes, but I ended up getting 3/4 only because the 1-inch seemed to be a little too stiff for what we're trying to accomplish here. It's going to be a little tougher to bend, a little tougher to shape and mold into what I wanted. So 3/4 it is. And by way of explanation, I am going with electrical conduit because number one, it's low cost. And number two, it's UV resistant. And PVC, PCVC, PCVC, any of those would break down and degrade in sunlight. So that's what we're going with. This should hold up well. We've already had it in play with our chicken coop for probably 3 to 4 years, and it's been holding up great. So we're going to go ahead and make it with that. Without further ado, let's get this thing put together. I only had a bag of 10 of these tees. I only need 6. But given that I'll make another 16-foot version of this in the future, to stockpile them. So there's our tees. These are actually found in the plumbing department. This is regular PVC, which is not technically sunlight resistant, but I've had it on the chicken coop and it's been just fine up until now, and that's been 3 years, 4 years. These are all our tees. Again, regular Schedule 40 PVC. So I decided to place the holes for the vertical supports a little close to the outside edge, or what will be the outside edge of the runner. That's what I'm doing here. And I ended up spacing them 4 feet apart, which was a nice even spacing over the 16 feet. To drill out the holes, I used a 7/8 Forstner bit, which was this one. And it was just slightly undersized from the pipe. So what I ended up doing, as you'll see in a moment, is I heated the pipe up and just forced it in the hole, which ended up with a really nice tight fit. I set the depth with this painter's tape to be just shy of poking out the bottom, so the tip on the Forstner bit didn't even penetrate the underside. That just created a stopping point for the Forstner, or for the pipe. And I used the painter's tape, as you see here. As a depth stop gauge. You see I lined the boards up next to each other here, and I just transferred the marks to ensure that the spacing would be exactly the same from one side to the other. So this was a little labor intensive. It took a lot of time to heat these pipes up with a heat gun, and I did use the high setting. Just stayed far enough away to keep from burning the pipe. It was actually really fascinating that once you did heat the pipe up, it was like rubber. You can see it kind of squishing around there. But it was perfect in order to get a really nice tight fit on that pipe into the wood. And there you can see it was crimped just to the exact inside diameter of that hole that was drilled. And here I am showing just pre-drilling a hole slightly undersized from the screw. And then I'll drive a screw in, and that will end up achieving is it'll keep the pipe from being uplifted out of the 2x4 once it's out, set up in the garden. Nice and strong. The bottom segments of each piece, of each arch, I measured to 8 feet. Here I just taped everything together on this end and on the other end, just for ease of cutting the pipe and cutting all of them at the same time instead of one at a time. Just saved a little time in the long run. And no, I was not endorsed by Lowe's on this project. Although if they want to endorse me, my contact info is in my about on my YouTube landing page. Please feel free to reach out. And I believe I mentioned this in my rabbit hutch build, but when you go to cut plastic, if you put the blade in backwards, you end up with less chip out and less issues. And that's what I'm doing here. And here I begin the extremely tedious process of heating up the ends. And I used a scrap block of 2x4 that I had drilled the hole into, just as a gauge block, if you will. I squeezed it on, let it sit for a moment, and I ended up getting a wet rag, soaked it with water, and just kind of draped it over the pipe each time I fitted it under the 2x4. Just kind of worked it back and forth to make sure that the fit was going to be good. I did notice that if you heated up the pipe and did not cool it down, it would tend to expand a little bit once you had set the diameter in the 2x4. And then you would go back to put it in the same hole and it wouldn't fit. So you have to substantially cool it down after you've sized it to the 2x4. Otherwise it wouldn't fit. I had 10 of these 8-foot sticks that I had to resize the bottom to fit into the 2x4 holes. And now I'm measuring off the 4-foot pieces that will create the top of the arc, as well as the 4-foot sections that will run the length of the greenhouse. I had purple primer in my shop already, so that's what I ended up using. If you don't want the purple primer, it does create a purple stain on the pipe. If you don't want that to be seen, You can get a clear primer, which will do just as well. But first you want to prime the ends. It just preps the plastic to receive this PVC cement. And in this case, I glued one of the 8-foot arch segments into a 4-foot arch segment so that I would have two 12-foot segments that would create this arch. So all in all, the arches were a little over 24 feet in length. Create the full arch, I intend to screw directly overhead to keep them together rather than gluing it, so that I can easily break this thing apart and transport it in the future if the need arises. When you glue PVC together, you saw me twist the pieces together. What I was effectively doing was melting the plastic into each other. It creates a much stronger bond rather than just pushing it together and holding it. If you twist it, it melts the plastic pieces together, and effectively you're never getting that apart again. So once I had the fittings on there, I wanted to make sure they were going to be lined up correctly, which is what you see me doing here. I just put them on the floor to make sure that the fittings would be exactly in line. If they weren't, that would cause complications when I go to put everything together out in the garden. So that was the glue up of what will become the center 3 arches. Now I use the tees on what will become the 2 end arches. So here's a little better view of me making sure that the fittings were lining up exactly even with each other. So here I'm fitting the 8-foot segments into one of the 4-foot segments that will create the arch. So I originally planed these down with the intention of gluing up, making a jig and gluing them up, because as you can you see that in the shot? It's quite flexible and it would fit nicely to the arch. My intention was to take 4 of these together, that's 5, glue them up so that there would be an arch. Can't quite bend it, but you can see what I'm talking about. I am going to abandon that idea, mostly for the sake of time, because I need to get this greenhouse together and this is going to take forever. So I really like the idea, and I think I may still yet make a wooden end for this greenhouse, but for the time being, they make a zipper that I used to use in the home restoration, or mold and mildew remediation world, that you can actually tape to the plastic that will create a doorway. I think for now, I'm just going to go ahead and use that for the sake of time and speed and being able to get this thing together so that we can get some stuff started in the greenhouse. So, cool idea. The wood is beautiful. Kind of makes me glad I'm not using it for this. But I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and we are going to just make the 12-foot ends that will go on each end of this to stabilize the structure sideways. We set up this thing temporarily on the floor just to see how big the arch was. So we got that corner in the hole that we had drilled previously. You saw that in the video. All the way over to here. And this is actually the tubing as it will lay, or not lay, but as it will stand. You can see the joints. I've got 1 T here, 1 T here, and another one here. And for those of you who are interested, if I've got enough interest, I'll post the dimensions. But we laid this out, and if you can see, actually, if you back up, let me move this. So one of the reasons I set this up, I wanted to see if my calculations, my math was right. As it turns out, it was not. So I planned on making this so that it would be 7'6" to the top of the arch. So from me in a standing position, I can reach 8 feet. That's not 7'6". So I'm kind of glad I laid it out. It gives me a better idea of how much material I'm going to need for the arch. Get a better feel for how it's going to look once we get it all set up. I'm pretty happy with the design so far. So now all we have to do is make the 12-foot ends that will brace this together, basically exactly what this is doing. But this piece here that we've got laid out is one of the long ends. So we'll go ahead and make the pallet ends. Once we do that, I don't think there's anything holding me from putting this skeleton at least back together. And we can really get a feel for how this is going to look. So I decided to lay out the pattern of the arch while I had the convenience of it being flat on my floor. So that's what I'm doing here. I rolled out the paper, just kind of scribed it onto the paper there, rolled it up, set it aside. And then if I decide to make this wood end in the future, all I have to do is roll that out and I can use it as a pattern. That should stay. That's famous last words. Well, everybody, thank you for sticking around this long. If you have comments, please feel free to make those comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm trying this voiceover to see if that would be helpful for you, for those of you who are trying to do something like this on your own. But please like this video. That really helps the YouTube determine whether my video is worth watching or not, and hit that subscribe button down below. I'll finish up this build next week, so please stay tuned. We'll see you next time.